Hi, how are you? No one again. What can I say? It's comfy. Kendrick Lamar. Ever since the massive beef between Drake and Kendrick has been my favorite rapper since. I have adored many of his projects that he released from Section 80, not really including Damn. However, I want to focus on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. See right here. This was Kendrick's chapter to wipe the slate clean with his overbearing savior complex, trauma, and abuse that he's been through in his life. It's tough to talk about topics such as abuse. I get it, people don't want to confront topics like this, but I think it's an important one to have. As someone who is half black and half Hispanic, rather a person of color, yes, I have gone through abuse in my life. I've gone through depression. I once thought that money would fix my problems a few years ago. In the past few months or so, I have been choosing myself over really anything and everyone that really wasn't there for me for those tough times. Therapy has been a gateway for me to process my feelings. This project tackles issues I would have never expected from someone like Kendrick. Granted, rapping about your adversities is nothing new in hip hop. This project does mean a lot to me because I think it separates him apart from his competition in hip hop, or for lack of a better term, his contemporaries. Let it be known that Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is important in Kendrick's catalog. Dating back to around 2016-2017, there was a release of B-sides from the Typical Butterfly sessions that was truly all killer and no filler. He embarked on the Damn Tour, headlining the arena, running from July 2017 to that same month in 2018 across North America and Europe. He was part of the Black Panther soundtrack in 2018, which featured other artists as well. It created hits like All the Stars with SZA. By 2019, he had became a father of 2 children, 1 son and 1 daughter, with his longtime partner. This would later influence the introspective themes in Mr. Morale. He took his hiatus between albums to also focus on personal growth, including therapy, and stepping back from the intense public spotlight, occasional appearances on tracks by other artists. In March 2020, Kendrick and his longtime collaborator Dave Free launched pgLang. This album was described as a marker in the growth of everything he wanted to say since childhood up to the age of 35. He underwent therapy to address personal issues, including childhood trauma, fatherhood, relationships, and internal conflicts. In interviews, he noted it was tough and required vulnerability. He had to confront insecurities, potential hurt to others like family or partners. He emphasized as a way to write his way out of long-held feelings, and the album became a therapeutic outlet and legacy piece for his children. Key collaborators included producers such as DJ Dahi, Soundwave, and Beach Noise. Sessions often featured live instrumentation, including heavy use of piano, guitars, and choirs, along with sampling and experimentation. DJ Dahi described ideas 4 to 5 years earlier through jam sessions with musicians, recording snippets, and then presenting them to Kendrick. Tracks like Count Me Out evolved from early demos through dozens of versions to fit the album's narrative. A pivotal London session with DJ Dahi, Soundwave, and others generate more ideas like Father Time. The album went through extensive revisions. Producers like Soundwave called it the toughest project yet, emotionally heavy due to the personal subject matter and pandemic isolation. Now that I have a context of this record, I'll dive into the track list. This album is a double LP, which means this is going to be a lengthy review. However, I will warn you that this album, specifically if you haven't listened to it, it definitely has some dark ass themes and heavy topics involving abuse, trauma, and involving mental health as well. So viewer discretion is advised. Let's dive into the track list. This is going to be a long ass video, much longer than the Dawn FM one, because my voice can only take so much. Luckily, we're starting off easy. The track opens with haunting vocals expressing a desire to find peace of mind, while his partner offers vocal contributions to tell people the truth. Kendrick tells us that he's been going through something for 1,855 days. Before the midpoint, there is some nice piano playing by Duval Timothy as it segues a murderous beat switch. The song touches on how everyone grieves differently, going over his outlets to numb his pain. Rolex watches only worn once, and infinity pools he never swam in, G-Wagons, mansions, and jewelry. Detailing losses, the pitfalls of fame, generational trauma, and how luxury is used to fuel haters or even cope. It's a cool opener for the album, and I tend to come back to it. I guess my only critique is the beat in the second half of the song, which is slightly derivative. However, Kendrick keeps it at bay with with great bars, nice rhyme schemes, and an expressive vocal performance.
Take off the collar, take off the flex and the white lies, take off the weird ass jury.
Jeez, this song is like the equivalent of DNA but it's not kind of like the defensive side. Some contribution from his cousin Baby Keem. It features bouncy modern trap elements which he was using on Melodic Blue. The heavy 808 bass, sharp hi-hats, and the minimalist synth melody were such an earworm for me. Kendrick is going over this mantra of taking everything off, specifically the mask in particular. He can't stress enough about taking off the mask and showing people who you really are. The fufu is a term that references clout, social media personas, and what's left is an ugly reality that most people are too afraid to face. He critiques materialism, performative activism, fake toughness in rap, and personal hypocrisies with his own past lyrics about women and violence. The verses touch on the cost of fame and the Black experience, referencing figures like Nipsey Hussle, rest in peace, and calling out culture vultures. One major highlight on this track is the moment when he calls out cancel culture.
What the fuck is cancel culture, though? Say what I wanna, but you niggas, I'm like.
I say that because around this time, I mean, by the time 2021, Eminem was getting canceled for lyrics he said in the past, which to me, I thought was a nothing issue. Like, I know I'm like in touch with his feelings. You know, I'm not that sensitive as my buddy Mochi is. The music video showcases heavy religious imagery and social allegory. The opening shot of Kendrick is a symbol of his overwhelming savior complex. It shows that he's just a man and not the messiah that he or his fans basically wanted, at least at the time. There's a reference to Judas Iscariot betraying Jesus, symbolizing how loyalty is often sacrificed for the aesthetic and the industry. The mirror in the video, I think, symbolizes two versions of Kendrick, Mr. Morale and the Big Stepper. Shattering the mirror signifies his need to destroy his own celebrity image to find his true self. This represents the defensive wall Kendrick builds before the deeper therapy begins, and he is still performing his pain, aka as like pretty much the Big Stepper. What do we have here? Some controversy? No way! Alright, that's because Kodak Black is on it. He opens the song narration introducing himself, Kendrick as OK Llama, and a spiritual teacher, Eckhart Tolle. Kendrick positioned Kodak as a big stepper, someone who acts out their trauma in the real world. He's coming across to the audience by giving us an idea that he's no better than Kodak, as they both come from the same cycle. The feature at the time, I do remember this, was quite controversial because of Kodak's past legal issues, but Kendrick puts his fans in an awkward position by challenging them to confront the underlying trauma. He dives into his sins to start the healing process, while his wealth wasn't fixing his problems that I believe he mentioned. It also had to do with sex addiction, thinking that that will fix his issues. Describe these encounters as a way to escape his anxiety and the pressure being this like savior. The chorus details people walking around in everyday life just mindlessly just trying to scratch some itch, being driven more and more by their trauma and ego rather than having to face the problem at hand. For the first time, he mentions his children, expressing a fierce protective instinct, and described himself playing baby shark with his daughter while watching for sharks outside at the same time. The beat itself is sort of odd, but it does play into what Kendrick is saying. It has a minimalist loop from the Funkies' Breakthrough.
Germophobic. I am not for the
There's some tap dancing on the track, like there was on the previous track. It serves as like a reoccurring motif as performing his pain in front of an audience, basically just rather than being real. This track creates a bigger picture for the Big Stepper from a local level to a global one, suggesting that humanity's collective ego is causing a worldwide cycle of harm.
Flourished on them stages. You asked that I had a problem. I said I might be racist. Ancestors watching me fuck was like retaliation. Once again, I go by the name of K-Dot.
You got the first tearjerker on the project. Jesus Christ, because this kind of hits close to home. It sounds clunky and smooth at the same time. If I had to describe it, it's a pop, rap, R&B tune. Blast and Amanda Ryford aren't particularly bold vocally. However, their performances weren't half bad. It's about the fear of opening up in a long-term relationship. On the chorus,
I hope I'm not too late to set my demons straight.
He's admitting that he's been emotionally closed off and is worried that his past mistakes might have permanently damaged his relationship with his partner. This point of the album is a sign that he wants to get better. The reason I mentioned that is a tearjerker for me on the project, it's mostly had to tie into everything that I mentioned in the intro. Kendrick's opening lines are referencing the pain he was trying to avoid by drugs, wealth, and sex. In the second verse, he says,
If I tell you who I am, would you use it against me, right or wrong, no stone? Let's ride.
It's a direct reference to John 8:7, I could be butchering that, in the Bible, with specifically, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone. He's challenging his fans and partner to preserve judgment. If we truly understood trauma, respond with unconditional love and compassion rather than condemnation.
Step. And I got daddy issues, that's on me.
Damn, I didn't think we get this deep here. Based on the title, it's about daddy issues. It explores how his father raised him with a tough love mentality that suppresses emotions, recounting being told to stop crying and be a man when falling and cutting his knee. The production has an amazing keyboard loop on it, and Sanford's voice is great on the chorus. One thing I thought was very telling about this track is his analysis of toxic masculinity, at least to me. This is quite difficult to discuss in male spaces. Before I go any further in this track, I do want to say something about this topic real quick. This is something I have heard that toxic masculinity is not real. It's often said from men. I think it's clearly real. Masculinity itself is great. However, whenever your masculinity tells you to put down the opposite sex, telling you that the opposite sex is inferior, telling you that suppressing your emotions equals strength, and lastly, that not fighting back or crying makes you a bitch, is when it becomes toxic to me. Okay, rant's over. Let's get back on track. Mentions how men constantly check the scoreboard and compete over women and money and status because they don't know how to validate themselves internally, which probably draws sort of like parallels with like the alpha male red pill bullshit. But he actually does draw a parallel between a street gang culture and the general male ego, suggesting that both are rooted in a lack of fatherly affirmation. Knowing that more makes it very interesting that some people would call fatherless activity, which is anything that involves men being feminine in any way, shape, or form. Just know that those people are fucking lame. There's a surprising Drake and Kanye mention on the line.
Kanye got back with Drake. I was slightly confused. Guess I'm not mature as I think. Got some healing.
Which he uses as an example of petty competitive energy, also admitting that he still needs to mature.
I salute you. May your blessings be neutral.
In the business, smart people making horrible decisions.
Looks like Kodak is back for some more controversy. Actually, this sounds very good. There's this survivalist mentality describing when he was growing up as a lost soul in a world that was only about the business. Despite making good money, Kodak expresses his persistent fear of his past. He views staying rich as a defensive necessity, not for luxury, but to ensure that he never returned to the trenches, which he describes as something that's truly terrifying. The production has like swirling piano chords, more and more intense, symbolizing disorienting in someone's mental state. Already got this on my chill playlist. It's very atmospheric with hi-hats that create an uneasiness along with a beat that complements it. The title is a reference to Eckhart Tolle's teachings. According to Tolle, being poor in spirit means having no inner baggage or egoic identification. The irony of the rich spirit is admitting that he has a rich ego. Lines such as highlight the tension between his external success and external isolation. A broke phone symbolizes his disconnection from a toxic world, but it also reflects his emotional unavailability to those close to him. Another line like,
Bitch, I'm attractive.
sounds like a flex on the surface, however, it sort of refers to the law of attraction. The idea that he finally manifesting a healthier life. It also serves as a shallow self-affirmation he uses to push people away. The music video, directed by Calmatic, reinforces themes of isolation. He is alone in a house, dancing, praying, and talking to a disconnected rotary phone. I mean, damn, how old do some of y'all feel? He is often shown peeking through a crack in the curtains, probably symbolizing his fear of the outside world and his struggles to maintain a balance between his fame and privacy. But this is just a calm before the storm. Okay, this isn't really a storm. It's a fucking hurricane. It functions less like a song and more like an act from a play, which I'm sure was intentional on Kendrick's part. The toxicity is at an all-time high on this. It's so nasty with the things that they're throwing at each other. Without question, Taylor Page's performance is phenomenal, truly putting her soul into the performance. What I should have known based on the production is that The Alchemist actually handles it. There's like with the sparse hypnotic piano loop throughout the entire track. There's a Florence and the Machine Machine sample at the beginning. After spending time with this track, the things that Kendrick says on here that he actually believes in. Like, I'm not one to discuss politics, but it does beg the question of how much Taylor Page and Kendrick throw at each other about men and women that they actually believe in. I've seen some online discussion about the comparison to Eminem's Kim. While I can see that comparison for sure, that Eminem track was so fucking dark. The end has them reconciling by having sex, because of course they did, symbolizing how many toxic relationships use intimacy as a drug to numb the pain rather than solving the underlying issues. Jeez, this was a fucking experience. This could possibly be like one of the greatest songs Kendrick has ever given to us. We're now at the climactic resolution of the first disc. By this point, the couple from the previous track decides to make a truce to stop fighting and acknowledge their shared wounds. The title of the song is a reference to like the military decoration awarded to the wounded or killed in action. In honor of survival, Kendrick is giving his partner and himself a Purple Heart, reframing it not just as failures, but as evidence of their resilience and bravery in staying together. The chorus of the song demands people be silent when the love is talking. Kendrick argues that love, or even God, is a quiet frequency, only be heard when the noise of drugs talking or ego talkings is removed. He also chooses spiritual discipline over the impulsive lust and forbidden fruit that nearly destroyed his family. He features at a nice touch, especially with the R&B singer Summer Walker. Her verse gives us the female's perspective. Wu-Tang veteran Ghostface Killah has a solid verse on the last of the track, deeply religious, referencing Elohim and acknowledging that even a G must remain humble and seek divine guidance. The instrumentation is sort of like Die Hard. There's not a whole lot going on. The lush arrangements are the only thing that really keeps this song from sounding shallow, in my opinion. Thankfully, the intent of the song plays into the overall concept of the record, and it's a nice ending to the first disc and an interesting transition over into the second.
Breakthrough.
Kendrick has finally made a breakthrough. This is, for me personally, the emotional centerpiece of the record. Kendrick is telling his critics and the industry to count him out of their expectations and games. He is relinquishing his role as a savior and celebrity, but going even deeper, he's literally counting his ego out. Some lyrics point this out.
Wipe my ego, dodge my...
Signals his attempt to kill his narcissistic self-image to find his true self. The video of this song proves that point too, narratively speaking. It has legendary actress Helen Mirren as his therapist asking why Kendrick feels like he's fallen, giving us a series of high art visual snapshots such as getting a COVID test, sitting on a hill like a demigod, and moments of intense isolation. Kendrick, with wings and his daughter behind him, symbolizes his protective nature even as he feels broken. By the end of the video, he returns to piano, possibly more than likely meaning his way forward is through his artistic honesty. This is noted on the line.
If I didn't learn to love myself, forgive myself 100 times, dog.
The style of this track is quite atmospheric with choir heavy background vocals. Then it transitions over to a bass-driven rhythm on the album version of the song. It uses an interpolation of Paradise by Tim Maxey to ground the song's spiritual themes. At the back end of the track, Kendrick has a relentless flow, pouring his emotions out. It's a very powerful moment for the record, finally being able to admit that there's something deeper going on. Oh god. Easily the most derivative song on here. Simply going back to just piano and voice makes this my least favorite track here. While I do think that Kendrick's performance is lackluster, the intention behind the song at least makes sense. The core theme of this track is I can't please everybody. It goes into that savior complex that Kendrick was struggling with by this point for years, and it's beginning to crack with this. By declaring that he can't please everybody, he's reclaiming his autonomy. There are Shakespearean allusions, specifically from Henry IV.
Uneasy lies the head that wears a crown.
This ties into the crown of thorns, specifically on the album cover. It's a custom headpiece that's made of 50 thorns and 8,000 diamonds. It's a symbolism of pain representing his burdens and judgments of others, while the diamonds symbolize how he and many celebrities, aka big steppers, try to mask pain with luxury and status. During live performances, Kendrick often prefaces the song by saying, framing his own public scrutiny through the lens of a religious lens. While the entire song is kind of whack, the message gets the job done. Oh no, Kodak is back. Kendrick uses this track as a mirror for his own life. The opening line is more about Kendrick's eternal battle with his own demons and trauma that makes him feel uncomfortable in his own skin. The choice of Kodak Black is basically used as an example, as someone who exemplifies the cycle of generational abuse and trauma that the concept seeks to break. By featuring him, Kendrick is practicing the radical forgiveness he preaches, even for those society has deemed unredeemable. The production has like these pew pew sounds throughout the beat, like silencing the noise, mirroring Kendrick's mental state of pushing the world away. I also enjoy the refrain on the track. Kodak's verse references real-world horror stories in the industry, including a cryptic nod to the XXXTentacion.
If you derive your sense of identity from being a victim.
Okay, now this is where we bridge between childhood trauma and the crushing weight of modern celebrity expectations. Now, the entirety of the song is solo performance from Baby Keem. It opens with Eckhart Tolle warning against deriving a sense of identity from being a victim of childhood bad things. It sets the stage for Keem to act as a study for someone navigating that exact victim history. He delivers some of his most vulnerable writing, referencing seeing his mother strung out while he studied division and his uncle stealing from him the day after Christmas. He also mentions that county jail visits was a regular occurrence, highlighting a life where survival was the only religion. This is sort of like a mirror to the interlude of Rich Spirit from the first disc. Kodak mirrors Keem in this regard. Kendrick frames both artists as reflections of himself, men who attained wealth but still grappled with the beauty and ugliness of their past. The track has amazing string arrangements. It's merely a taste for the biggest breakthrough for Kendrick, not just on this record, but in his entire catalog on the next track.
What they say, you do the cha-cha, I'ma stand on it 6'5".
Yes, finally. It's about damn time. Kendrick finally breaks off his savior complex, finally declaring that he is not your savior. He begins by including a list of prominent black figures such as J. Cole, Future, and LeBron James to emphasize that they are just as human and flawed as everyone else. He admits to having difficulty loving thy neighbor as it is for an average person. This is sort of the same sentiment he has on the closer of the album, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. Just like with N95, he continues to speak on cancel culture. He mocks the idea that posting blacked out screens on social media constitutes real solidarity, while meditating in silence is viewed as betrayal. The second verse has a parable about Christian questioning Irving's vaccine stance at the time, if you know, you know, highlighting how people flip-flop on profits based on convenience. I enjoy the production on here. It features a driving rhythmic pulse, especially with huge hits of bass. Sam Dew's performance adds a sense of urgency and spiritual weight to the track. There's a sample of River Tiber, providing the atmospheric texture underlying Kendrick's aggressive delivery. When it comes to Kendrick's distancing himself from his savior complex, I do want to say something that comes from a personal place. Ever since I started doing reviews, or really my music journalism journey, I quickly learned that these artists struggle a lot mentally speaking. To name a few artists like Avicii, Michael Jackson, Kanye West, and I'm going off script here when I say this name. Eminem, especially in the late 2000s, if you know, you know, if you remember. Like, all of these artists have dealt with heavy stuff in their life, which brings me to the next thing I actually want to say. I tend to get some comments specifically on my TikTok, and if you follow me there, you probably know what I'm talking about specifically whenever I'm critical of a massive artist, a popular artist, or even an artist who has like a very passionate fan base, tends to make a few personal attacks towards me, like for my face, the way I look, or how I speak. And let me just make this abundantly clear, y'all. These artists do not know you. Sure, these artists don't know me personally either. However, I'm not going after people's appearances or the way they speak. I'm not making personal attacks who actually disagree with me on something on music. Specifically with these goddamn stands from certain fan bases tend to act like children when I know damn well some of them, if not most of them, are adults. Specifically grown-ass adults. Someone criticizing one of your favorite artists or something you like or something you fuck with, it's not gonna kill you. You are going to be A-okay. A lot of you motherfuckers are very inauthentic that are in these spaces, capable for someone to the point where you have to personally attack someone for not liking something that you do. I'm specifically talking about a lot of Drake fans, a lot of Playboi Carti fans, Taylor Swift fans, and even Kendrick fans, especially after the beef, to name a few. To a lot of y'all fans, if not for the worst, our stands. Lastly, I know y'all hate to see a nigga try to create something with this fucking content I'm doing. And none of your favorite artists are your savior or know you. Again, if you know that, then please shut the fuck up about it and stop attacking people and stop just making blatant low-level effort bullshit comments just because people just don't agree with you or just doesn't have a take that you have. Jesus fucking Christ. Rant's over. Let's get back to the fucking album. Jeez. Whoa. I never would have thought Kendrick would make a song about this. This track is quite divisive and for understandable reasons. It follows Kendrick's journey from childhood ignorance to adulthood acceptance of his transgender relative, specifically a trans uncle and his cousin, Mary Ann. During the first two verses, he places us back to when he was in elementary and middle school, purposefully using slurs, misgendering, and dead naming, here to accurately depict the environment he was raised in, where they didn't know no better. Going into adulthood, he begins to see that wall that his relatives had to build in order to survive family disbelief and societal mockery. The final resolution is where he stands up to the preacher who is condemning his cousin, asking the pivotal question.
Mr. Preacher Man, should we love thy neighbor? The laws of the land of the heart was greater.
The song's central thesis is the choice of humanity over religious dogma. He challenges the church's judgment by citing Jesus' teachings on radical inclusivity and loving thy neighbor, like we mentioned much earlier. He concludes that the family bond, rooted in love, is more than rigid doctrine. There is a point on the track where he references a moment back in 2018 when he brought up a white fan on stage and she said the N-word, and the overall lesson is saying that, well, that the N-word wasn't her right words to say, but it is equally as unacceptable as saying something like a homophobic slur. Now look, as a gay man, I of course do take this like song with a grain of salt. We were all ignorant of something. Yes, as a kid, casual hate speech and like bigotry was such a common thing. That's like the late 2000s, early 2010s. Yeah, that was such a common thing. I'm not necessarily saying what Kendrick is saying here is right or wrong about the use of the F slur having the same impact as a white person saying the N-word. It's definitely a conversation to have because, I mean, you do have people who do have a problem with there's certain groups of people saying one of these words, but one word, but it will have no problem with saying the other. So I'm just saying it's a conversation to have. Got some Pharrell production with this high energy style, but it still sounds dark and urgent. I love when Pharrell Williams uses huge hits of bass, and Kendrick confronts his generational ghost head on. Mr. Morale represents his evolved consciousness, the version of himself that is choosing awareness over his ego. The point of this track is also for him to explain the generational trauma when it comes to the Black experience. He mentions figures like R. Kelly, Oprah Winfrey, and his own mother to illustrate how cycles of abuse and trauma have been woven into the fabric of the culture for generations. One line that stuck with me is
sacrificing myself to start the healing you.
Acknowledging that the demons he fights aren't just his own, but those passed down through his bloodline. Tana Leone's role, who is a PG Lang signee, has them highlighting the feeling of temporary numbness or relief that comes with when a traumatic cycle is momentarily paused. It forces Kendrick's commitment to the next generation, showing that new prophets are also doing the work to break down cycles. There's also another snippet from Eckhart Tolle discussing the pain body, which is a semi-autonomous energy field of emotional pain that feeds on unhappiness. However, this is nothing compared to the heaviest themes on the next track. This hits so close to home. It almost broke me in the process. This is the narrative climax of the project, nearly 7 minutes long, of piano and short vocal lines from Beth Gibbons, specifically who's from Portishead. Kendrick dives into the deepest trauma, and almost like forming a public exorcist. The track revolves around a specific childhood memory of his mother being abused and a subsequent suspicion that Kendrick's cousin had also molested him. Kendrick repeatedly denied his mother, scarred by her own history of sexual violence, couldn't believe him. When he was just 5 years old, he felt the weight of her pain and his own inability to protect her, a moment he describes as a tough decision. He also frames generational trauma as something that goes back hundreds of years, something that he also expressed on the previous track. This trauma for Black people more than likely stems from the dehumanization and torture experienced during slavery. He explores how these traumas manifest in men as like lust addiction or performative toughness, which he also again has also expressed on previous tracks. Meth Gibbons' refrain on the chorus anchors the song in a deep yearning to escape the self and the pain associated with it. The climax of the song ends with Kendrick declaring a transformation and his intention to set free the hearts filled with hatred. He extends forgiveness to all abusers, not for their sake, but to liberate his family and himself from the cycle of hatred. His partner affirms that he finally did it, saying that he broke a generational curse.
I'm proud of you. You broke a generational curse.
Which confirms that Kendrick is free from his traumas and is now ready to conclude the entire record. We're finally at the end of this emotional roller coaster. Dave puts the nail in the coffin with this ongoing mantra of choosing himself. Now, him apologizing isn't necessarily a plea for forgiveness. It's a firm boundary with him choosing himself, his mental health, and his role as a father over this weight of being a cultural spokesperson. He revisits themes from earlier on the album, acknowledging that he'd rather be judged by a few than loved by a crowd while living and alive. The overall production on here is another oddball piece. The beat itself is sort of weird. The lush strings and synths on the chorus are the only thing that's really keeping the song interesting. The song plays as a literal mirror for Kendrick. By this point, it's the opposite for what we got on United in Grief in the beginning. Yeah, this is a uplifting resolution for not only the album's concepts, but for Kendrick.
Life.
Damn, this was an experience. I thought that this record was a great time. Granted, it went some very deep and dark territory, but the vast majority of the track list were great, a lot of points were made, and it showed how important this project was in its entire catalog. I chose this album myself for this deep dive, or really review, whatever you want to call it, because of my own personal experience, especially with the ones I mentioned that's been happening recently. I've recently been going to a therapist, building confidence, and finding myself through my love for talking about music and bringing my buddy Mochi along for the ride. There are some weird moments and performances on the track list. I still don't know about the song Crown. Wait, you're forgetting one more song. You son of a...
To burn, missed at the inner city, miscommunication to keep homo.
Okay. It was a part of the same era, pretty much before the album came out. It was included on the album version I listened to. So, okay, I'll buy. Kendrick uses the phrase "the culture" with weary sarcasm to critique how systemic cycles of violence, abandonment, and infidelity are often normalized. He rejects this label on the line, urging a move toward valuing life over toxic status symbols. He also deconstructs hustle culture and warns against a victim culture. In the final verse, he raps largely from the perspective of the late Nipsey Hussle, posing forgiveness and self-improvement as the only ways to break generational trauma. In the video, Kendrick's face would often morph into like these iconic and controversial Black figures. Kanye West represent the complexities of Black success, mental health, and the burden of public scrutiny. Jussie Smollett is used to critique the fabrication of victimhood for personal gain. Will Smith is an example of lashing out due to deep-seated pain, probably in reference to the incident that happened at the 2022 Oscars. Kobe Bryant and Nipsey Hussle are represented as figures of divine fulfillment and community leadership, showing a path toward a better culture. The production samples Marvin Gaye's 1976 track, I Want You, turning a romantic anthem into a plea for the hood to love him back.
Still, I want you.
Thank you, Mochi. You shall go to bed now. Song low-key broke me as well when I was going through it. Along with this song, the album was great. Sure, it's no GKMC or TPAP. Definitely not GNX, but it was still a great time. I'll end this before I have a literal emotional breakdown. And I'll give this an A. Okay, damn. Album achieved significant commercial and critical success, debuting at #1 on the US Billboard 200 with 295,000 units sold in its first week. It was the fastest selling album of 2022 at the time. It became the first hip hop album of the year to surpass 1 billion streams on Spotify. All 18 tracks from the standard album got on the charts, specifically with songs like N95, Silent Hill, and even Die Hard reached the top 10, or were the ones, or really the only ones that really reached the top 10. The Big Steppers Tour became the highest grossing rap tour of all time at the time, generating $111 million from 73 shows. It won Best Rap Album at the Grammys. Kendrick was the most nominated male artist that year with 8 nominations. Crazy, because he just did that shit again with the past recent Grammys that happened, including Album of the Year. Other honors included Favorite Hip Hop Album at the AMAs and Album of the Year at the BET Hip Hop Awards. Okay. Oh, God. I guess I'll end this on off script. I'll say something that's I'm going completely off script, so I won't necessarily be looking at the screen that much. Yeah, I would definitely tell you guys to definitely take care of yourselves. This is kind of like parallels to how I did my video on Porter Robinson's Nurture. Like, I do think that you guys definitely need to take care of yourself because, I mean, Jesus Christ, this life is too short to leave early. Is really what I'm trying to say. And honestly, to those who even are willing to watch the entirety of these types of videos, I thank you. I can't thank y'all enough for supporting me in this way. I mean, granted, I hope to get something out of this. I really hope to make this like potentially a job in the future. Who knows? But this is a place for me to take the mask off, not have to perform for people. And honestly, I think you guys let me do that. And again, I can't thank y'all enough. So I'm gonna go. We'll see you on the next video. Cue the outro music. Don't go crazy, Mochi. Do not go crazy.